everybody, and thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Uniquely Designed. And I am so happy that I get to speak to not a stranger to me, maybe to you, but she won't be by the time I get finished. She is my sister, family, and I don't use that word loosely. You know, people will be like my friend, my sister. And y'all don't even talk to each other, you know. So I really mean it when I say she is family to me, literally, really, seriously. So I'm really happy to welcome Miss VaShaun to the Uniquely Designed podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am good. So today we have had a little delay in our start because she's all over the place. She had a lot of different things she had to get done. I won't say what that is, but we're happy that she is here. So I want to talk about all things VaShaun because your name is on all things VaShaun.
Oh my goodness.
So that's why you are a brand within yourself.
Yes.
For those who don't know what you do, we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I want to first talk about how long we've known each other. That's the first thing.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how long it's been, but I know it's been a long time because I was first introduced to your family through your aunt, who was one of the sweetest women that I've ever known.
Yes.
Her spirit was always the same.
Yes.
She's always like gentle spirit. And then later through that, your mom, then you. So then your mom became my mom, and then you came. So that happened. We just grasped each other. So it's been, I don't know how long.
I was thinking it was closer to maybe 20 years, but maybe 15, 20 years, somewhere around there.
I remember when I was growing up, and I used to say, I would hear people say, oh, they've been my friend for 15 and 20 years. I'm like, they are so old. They're so old. And now I'm like...
Actually, now,
yeah. When I went to my 20-year high school reunion, I said, something is wrong. Something's happening. Yeah, but I say that to say that growing older doesn't look like it used to look when I was growing up.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, we're the aunties and uncles now. Like, that's what's...
What do they say on Black Panther? He said, hey, auntie.
Right. Like, we're the aunties and uncles. I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. We're making it look much better than Absolutely. I remember, because some of the people I remember being 40 and 50, it didn't look like I wanted to ever be there. Like I said, I'm not interested in that.
No.
So I brought all of that up as far as how long we've known each other to say that your grounding, your foundation, not that you veered from it, but is in church. And if I'm not mistaken, Missionary Baptist Church.
That was my church home when we moved to Kentucky. Okay. So I grew up non-denom in the 80s. Now, most people are like, wait a minute.
Explain lots of things.
Yes. So, I had a white pastor, and we had a praise team. We didn't have choir. Like, I didn't learn hymns until I was 16.
I'm so sorry.
Like, really. So, somebody will bust out a hymn, and I'm like, I don't know it. Yeah.
So, that's good because... You know, you are what some people don't know you. A lot of people know you in, some people who are watching or listening might not know you at all. But those who do know you in the social era as influencer, as well as in other business ventures that we'll get into shortly. But what people might not know, who don't know you, and those who do know you don't know it this as well, is that you are also a licensed minister.
Yes, I have been licensed under the tutelage of Dr. Colin Gray.
Come on here.
Under the tutelage of Dr. Colin Gray for 9 years.
Come on here.
Yes.
Preacher of God's holy word.
Yes.
But that's why I wrote it. That's why I mentioned it, because being that your background, now knowing that it was non-denominational, and not just necessarily Missionary Baptist, you know, that would be why you're, you know,
different,
never contained. You're free. That. You've been free.
Free. I was born free.
You know, that's good, you know, because, you know, being a minister, your mom, of course, as well, you know, when you have to unlearn things, it's a different path.
Absolutely.
So you didn't have to go through the unlearning path.
Not at all.
Which I believe has probably caused you to be able to soar in the ways in which you've been able to soar, because you were never probably told what you couldn't do.
That's it. That's it. My mom has been licensed in the ministry for 32 years. So when we moved to Kentucky and people say women don't preach, I'm like, why not? I've watched her all over the country, literally. In the 80s, she preached everywhere. In the 90s, so what are you saying, women don't preach? It sounds kind of crazy. So yes, I was born free, so I don't know what that feels like, but then I lend my voice.
Born free.
I was born free, so then I lend my voice to those that aren't and that weren't. So that's kind of where I am.
So before you got into business, even in your teenage years, what do you believe was your turning point that started to move you into a different? Of course, I know most of your stories.
Sure. So my father's in the military. My mother, like I said, is a preacher. So I was a preacher kid, military brat, all of that. They got divorced when I was 7 years old. And when they got divorced, I felt like that was my turning point, because in the non-denom church, I was teaching by the time I was 8, 9 years old. Like at 10 years old, I had my own Sunday school class. Like I was teaching the Bible. And people were like, wait a minute, you were 10? I was teaching the Bible. They taught us how to rightly divide as children. So after my parents' divorce, I think that was my turning point, and I went the other way. So I was like, you know what? If God loved me, my parents would still be together. If God loved me, I would still live in Goose Creek, South Carolina. If God loved me, I wouldn't be transplanted into Kentucky. And that just started this spiral, and I went all the way left to when I was 19 years old, faced 25 years in prison. So I made a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad dudes, and it could have cost me everything. And I felt like God used that moment to say, listen, this can go as far as you want it to go, but you've been called. So are you going to keep running, or are you going to do what I say? So from 19, I was 19, 20, trying to figure it out. 20 years old, I had my son. And I was like, okay, now I have this baby. Now I have this record. I was on probation for 7 years. And so I was like, I had to figure life out. I've got this little boy. He's got to be something. He's got to be somebody. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to what I know, and I know God. And so I connected with an organization called Step by Step, and they loved me back to where I was before the trauma happened, and I got pregnant in ministry. And so people are like, oh my God, I was teaching on purity, 4 months pregnant. And I was conflicted, because I knew what I was supposed to be doing. I know all the things, we know all the things, but I'm pregnant. And so at that time, I will never forget this. This was April of 2004. I met Kylan and Cassandra Gray. And Reverend Cassandra Gray, came and did a conference for Step by Step. And she was just prolific, and you know her. She's just a wonderful orator, and she spoke to my spirit. And I was sitting next to a friend, and I was like, you know what? We're not sitting next to each other, because every time I sit by somebody, preachers give me words. So I knew I was going to get a word. Like, you sit over here, I'm going to sit right here. I don't want Cassandra to prophesy to me. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, God told me to tell you your pain is not for naught. And I was like, oh my God. And then she said, and the baby that you're pregnant with is not a mistake. My director, VaShaun, you're pregnant? Reverend Cassandra was like, so no one knew? No. She was like, I'm sorry, I just did what God told me to do. Immediately sat down, immediately, stripped away, you're never going to be used by God, went through all of that. And so God dealt with me in that time, and I started growing, and that's when I got connected to New Mount Zion, and that was that. So that was 18 years ago. My daughter just turned 18 this year.
So take me to even how that felt, even with her coming in, which of course I know what she,
Yeah.
Both of them are oil carriers.
Yes.
They're almost a rarity,
Mm-hmm.
in a room full of wannabes. They are.
That's it.
Oil carriers, real authentic. For those of you who don't know who they are, you should find them.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Kylan and Reverend Cassandra Gray. But anyhow, that moment, or not before she came, how did it feel even teaching about purity and knowing what you were carrying? How did you feel anything within yourself before?
Yes, I felt conflicted because I know God. Like, a lot of my friends were taught church. This is how you shout in church. This is what you do in church. I was taught relationship. I was taught this is what God wants and this is what the relationship should look like. And so I knew what I was doing was wrong. I had a boyfriend and he was just such a great guy. And, there's a lot of stories that I can say about that. But I was just like, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep this man. And I got pregnant like within the 2 months we were together.
So for those who don't know this,
Jeez.
And I just try to say things for those people because we have a mixed audience. This is not necessarily a Christian podcast, so
Okay.
I understand that.
Okay.
So no, that's not. Don't change the conversation. But I tried to explain for those who might not know. What would you say by people knew church but didn't know God, or people learned church? I know what you mean, but
Okay, so and again, this is what I've seen in the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years. We teach our children, you get dressed on Sunday morning, you put your smile on, you praise God, you raise your hands. This is what church looks like. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. And again, this is just what I've seen. What I grew up knowing was, I remember I was 6 years old and I had a youth pastor. So this was in 87. A youth pastor that taught me how to hear the voice of God. I would never forget, we were playing like this kind of Jeopardy kind of game or whatever. And she was like, what are the names of the angels in the Bible? I was 6. And as clear as day, I heard Gabriel. And so I was like, Gabriel? And she said, VaShaun, did you just hear that? I said, yeah, I just heard a voice tell me Gabriel. She was like, that's the voice of God speaking to you. So I was taught, okay, so this is a real thing. He'll speak to you if you're sensitive enough. You'll hear his voice. And so that's what I was taught, again, in the 80s, 90s, moving to Kentucky. Didn't see that at all. We had Sunday school, Bible school, you shout in the front, and if you have a church that doesn't shout, you sit in the back, and that's it. You sing. Front. Yeah, that's it. Like that's what you do. And I was like, this is so weird, but okay.
There's so much to say about that, but I digress. I will not. But yes, I agree with all of that you said. So I was just saying that to say, did you feel conflicted about that? Which you did say that, but I didn't want to miss that because sometimes, because I wanted to know, did that come from a personal place and not a church place? That was where I was going at.
Okay.
Because sometimes the institutional church, the reason I say it's not a Christian podcast, not that we don't talk about Christian things, because all my guests usually have some faith component.
Okay.
But I want to think in terms of, sometimes the institution, what we know as church, can sometimes put these barriers, or you got set down, you can't do this or whatever. So you feel convicted because the institution shut you down, or the organization condemned you, but you didn't necessarily feel personally convicted. So that's why I wanted to see.
Yes, I got you.
That.
Yes. So when they were like, oh no, you're not pure anymore. And I remember thinking, this organization is for young women that make mistakes. I made a mistake. I was 22 when I got pregnant with my daughter. And you're chastising me in front of these girls, and they're looking like, and there were girls that left the organization because they were like, well, what about Grace? They were like, no, she's pregnant and she's saved and she's a minister or Bible teacher, because at that time I didn't want to be a minister, but Bible teacher.
I want to be one.
Yeah, I didn't want to be.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Bible teacher.
Yeah. So when she came, really that gave you, in a sense, even before, you got shut down and stuff, that gave you hope.
It did.
In the midst of confliction.
It did. And I remember I spoke to her after the fact, and then it was funny. My mom was like, you've got to meet these preachers, Dr. Kylan and Cassandra Gray. And I was like, Cassandra Gray is the one that prophesied to me. She was like, no, we need to go to the mountain. Like, I need to take you to New Mount Zion and Shelbyville. And I remember one of the first things that Dr. Gray said to me, he looked at me, he said, who told you you weren't enough? It's like, y'all gonna leave me alone. I don't know who and what y'all on, but y'all gonna leave me alone. He was like, somebody told you you were enough. You're enough. And you're gonna do what God says. And you're gonna do exploits before all the stuff that you probably gonna talk about later. You're gonna do all these things for God. And I'm like, I'm just gonna raise my little babies and I'm gonna sit in this chair and we're gonna do church and you're gonna leave me alone. So yeah.
Yeah, that is rich and great in many different regards. Of course, great people, but I'm so glad that in the midst of confliction, you had greatness spoken and pulled out of you.
Yes.
Which I think is very important for anybody, of course, who's listening or watching, that you don't have to have arrived at a place for greatness to come out of you.
That's it.
So I think that that's good, because a lot of people are just like, my mistake disqualified me, but
no.
Jonathan McReynolds said recently in some reel he had posted that his first song was, I think, No Shades of Grey or something. That it's probably not called that. I just messed it up. Everybody says that's what it's called. I know how we always say the first few lines of the song and say that's the name of it. But anyhow, but I know the song. He's talking about, you can't be black or white. Whatever. You need to be black or white. You can't be gray. But anyhow, and he was saying that a lot of people thought that because he wrote the song that he was an example, that he was not vacillating between two worlds. Wow. Part of me loves you, part of me loves the world. Mm-hmm. He said that didn't mean I was a teacher of it. Mm-hmm. It means I was writing the song saying that's really how I felt. Part of me loves God, part of me loves the world. Yeah. He said so a lot of his songs, people put him in a category of you're the example of this. And that is sometimes the confliction between when you're teaching about purity, or you're teaching about finances or whatever you're teaching about, people automatically think that you are now the expert.
Right. You are the purest
thing. Yeah. So then when people find out we're human, people get so disappointed. I did not know you were human.
Oh my goodness.
I thought that you were the epitome of which I should ascribe to be. So I thought that was really important.
Yes,
to know that.
That's rich.
Where I was going with that, I do not know, but that was very good.
Let me go get my paper. That was good. Listen, come on.
Yeah. So, but I think that because there are people who your assignment and whatever you have doesn't. We are. It talks about we are living epistles, or we are living this thing out. So we are working it out sometimes while we're talking it out. Like we're still
literally
a work in progress. So all from those early years, now you are a single mother. You are recently, well, you're not there yet. I don't think you are, unless I missed some post. But you are dating, of course, with intention or whatever. And you are a businesswoman. Not just a businesswoman, you're a serial entrepreneur.
Serial entrepreneur, yes.
I've heard of serial killers, but you are a serial entrepreneur. And I want to know, how did that, he said you would do great exploits or whatever. How did that even start? Were you earlier in life, even though you didn't want to be ministering, that type of stuff? Did you envision things? Did you see things? Were you always drawn towards things that were different?
Okay. That is a loaded question. So we're going to start with Dr. Gray's part. So, everybody's like, always growing up, you're going to be a preacher like your mom. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do what she does. She does what she does. She's great at what she does, but I didn't want to do it. And so Dr. Gray made it a point to teach me how to realize what my calling is, what it's going to look like. He said, VaShaun, I don't see you as a pulpiteer. Even when he licensed me, when he handed me my license, he says, I don't expect to see you in church every Sunday. I expect to see you in somebody's boardroom using your voice to speak to the voiceless and to defend the things that need to be defended and to speak on the things that need to be spoken on. And so what I love about him is he didn't put me in a box. And that's something that many preachers and pastors literally came to me and was like, your pastor needs to stop you, because how dare you as an associate go and do all these things? And I'm like, I have his permission. And I mean, I know you remember the group. How are you free to speak so freely and okay to speak so freely and do what God says? And he didn't tell you what to do. And he said, God called her. I licensed her, but God called her. And I'm
It
just
goes
gonna
back to what you said earlier. I was born free. Because people who don't know what they can't do don't know how to ask for permission.
Oh my.
You know, like when you have never had the limitations placed on you or the constructs of what you can and cannot do, what the region does and does not do, what the state does and does not do. When you come here a free citizen, you come saying, I didn't know y'all ain't free, and that doesn't mean that people are wrong for that, but I believe that for you I'm asking, it's a question to say, do you believe that many of us, and I say many of us meaning from the spiritual area, are doing a disservice to the real community or the real world at large or the marketplace or whatever, because we're so busy being clones of each other in a small box?
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. We have said, this is what church looks like, this is what ministry looks like, this is what business looks like, and that's it. So what happens if you're a licensed minister that is in business? What happens if you are licensed in a church and you're called to the marketplace?
So how do we have a conversation or train or open our minds to even equip people or send people? Like, there are people who will not be deacons. They will be senators.
Yes.
There will people who will not be missionaries. They will be teachers, or they will be, and not just teachers. Some of them will go on and be university presidents or whatever. How do we start to shape more world leaders instead of Sunday school teachers?
Well, we need to include those that lead in the Sunday school lessons. So we need to bring those.
First of all, some people don't hear Sunday school. They don't know what it is.
Okay.
It's a thing we used to do a long time ago. Once upon a time, picture this, Sicily, 1913, when we used to have something called Sunday school. It was an aggregation of people that would come together. You had men's class, women's class, children's class, and you would have topical things, and you would go to sleep. But it was Sunday school, and then we would go, and after that, people would get up in front of the people, and you would say what you learned, and then you have an offering, and then you would say, I have decided to follow Jesus. Then you would break. Then you have church. There it is.
So if we broke out of that mold, then there's nothing wrong. And I want to make sure I'm clear. I am not speaking against the church. I'm not a renegade, because people will say, oh my God, you don't love God. No, I love God.
So to clear for the first of all, people know me enough. Well, they do. And if you don't know me, my name is Mario Raffer. Nice to meet you. But for most people who listen to the podcast, I think what we don't allow a lot is conversations of varying opinions.
Yes.
Conversations of varying opinions don't mean that we disagree, or it doesn't mean that we're tearing anything down. But at the same sense, the only reason that the civil rights movement or Black Lives Matter or et cetera, many different things have continued to progress or move or have lasted this long is because there's people in the room who are not intimidated enough to say, I don't agree with what you say. You have passion in what you say. However, if that worked, we would have been a lot further by now.
Absolutely.
So the conversation is not a tearing down or whatever. I love the church. Yes. I love God. What's wrong with you? I do. All that stuff. But at the same sense, if you don't talk about something, and then everyone's posting the young people don't come to church anymore, well, someone has to have a conversation to say, well, maybe the reason they didn't come is because Meg Thee Stallion was in your choir. And instead of you supporting her, she went and dropped her knee somewhere else, in the world, because they accepted. I'm not saying it right or wrong, but I'm saying to be able to be global thinkers, in a sense of beyond what, because I think sometimes what we hand down is what we know. So if I hand down what I know, if you do what I don't know, then I call that different. Because we ain't never seen that before.
At all. We don't do that.
In our family, that's not what we do.
No, over here in Pentecost, we don't do that. Yeah, I've heard all that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm act right.
I might take my children out of here. We don't, there's certain things that we don't do. So when you don't know what you can't do, you don't know you can't do it.
That's it.
That's so not just to even uplift what Kyle and Grace said, but just even going back to your background, it seems to it's like you've been on this pathway from, childhood on, even if you didn't know there was a pathway,
Yes.
of a launching pad of, I don't even want you to start outbound.
Right.
Even though you might get bound somewhere,
right.
You'll always go back to the place you started at.
That's good. Come on, man. Listen, y'all give me a few dollars out of my purse. That was good. Listen,
you will always go back. So
yeah.
I just want to point that out. That was good. But I'm just asking that. It was a question I was asking, that how can we do a better job of supporting and not saying, like, for instance, going back when you talk about, he said you wouldn't be in the church, you wouldn't be there a lot or whatever. Does that make your calling less effective if you're not sitting in a seat of a service that lasts 2 hours?
No.
Once a week?
I say it like this. The proof is not in the pudding, it's in the eating. And so who's eating, what are they digesting, and then what's coming from that. So you're going to see what the fruit is doing. Now, if you got the fruit just sitting in a basket in a closed room, rotten, there's not much that needs to be said. But if you've got fruit out here and you've planted seeds and you're watching just it flourish, people are eating, people are growing, people are moving, I think you have the answer there.
So the seed was planted. Mm-hmm. So how did you get? Because I would just go down the rabbit hole and I won't come back. Discipline is bringing me back in. So how did the seed got planted and you start to delve into business?
Well, it started with 9 years ago. Like I said, was licensed in the ministry. And before that, I don't want to ignore the seeds that my mom planted. Like she said, she saw something in me and she has a story. And I'm going to tell it because I know it's going to make her happy. This is Dog's story. I had to be every bit of 5 or 6 years old in Goose Creek, South Carolina. And
first of all, where is Goose Creek, South Carolina?
Goose Creek, South Carolina. Goose Creek is about 15 miles outside of Charleston. Okay. It's a military town, and so that's where I was raised. I was raised in Goose Creek, South Carolina. I had to go ahead and drop that Lana because who are you? But anyway, so I was in the backyard with my friends, and my mom said her and her friend was in the living room. They were talking or whatever, what have you, and her friend was like, "Hey, Angie, come here real quick." She said I was in the backyard and I had the neighbor's dog like lifted up. The friends were holding it up and they had his paws up and I had my hand laid on it. And I said, "Father God, in the name of Jesus." And they were like, "She is praying for this dog. Like, it is hilarious. Like, she is really, having service with her little friends." And I had, like I said, been 5 or 6 years old. And something happened to the dog. The dog got hurt. The neighbor took the dog to the vet. And they were like, "Well, it looks like the dog had some kind of tear or fracture in his leg, but it looks like it's been healed." And my mom went back to the friend. The friend went back to my mom, was like, "I think your daughter prayed for my dog and it got healed." And so my mom knew then. She was like, "This girl's gonna be different. Like, she's praying for dogs and she's having service in the backyard." I was on fire. So I that's for Angela Allen Johnson, my mother, Reverend Angela Allen Johnson. She planted the seeds in me. But what Dr. Gray did, he gave me permission to be who God called me to be. He said, "You're not going to preach like your mom, but you're going to be effective in what God calls you to do." So 9 years ago, my mom and I had a podcast, Conversations of a Mother and Daughter, and that's where I learned to hone my voice because I was so afraid of just speaking out. Like, what if I say it wrong? What if what if I'm ill-equipped? All these things. And I appreciate the fact that my mom helped me hone my voice on the podcast. Right after the podcast, like I said, did my initial sermon, did that. When Reverend Gray was like, "I expect you to go do exploits." And during that time, I was in my late 20s, going into my 30s, worked in corporate America. And so that's a story in and itself. I was a 2-time felon for 7 years, no college degree, and I made it to executive level in corporate America. I was the executive assistant to the vice president of global services operations. And so I was a big dog. I was 30. I was doing my thing, and I was just like, I love life. And I think God ended my tenure in corporate because it was turning me into somebody that he didn't want me to be. Because, corporate women tend to be a little more aggressive and edgy, and I like doing that. So they told me to be mean to people, and I did. They used to call me Little Pit Bull, and I did what I did. So I was good at what I did. But anyways, randomly got an email one day saying my entire department was being shipped to the Philippines. And so, do you want to ship to the Philippines with your department? I'm like, absolutely not. I got 2 young children. I'm not uprooting my family and moving to the Philippines. So I took a gamble on myself. I made a lot of money for this company in corporate America. So I said to myself, if I can make them millions, what could I do for myself? I can at least make $1 million for myself. And so I started my first business. I started talking about it in 2014. And you remember that, my V&E post, and that's when I started branding VaShaun Enterprises, which is my first enterprise, and started branding myself, VaShaun Nicole, the micro influencer. And
okay, stop.
There's that.
So
yeah,
you brushed by that like it's just I just said, I make millions for them, I can make at least $1 million for myself.
That's what I thought.
Child, I mean, the fact that you thought it is the entire podcast within itself. Because when people are used to making millions for someone else, or making money for someone else, or making someone else's brand good, the switch between I'm going to be my own brand, that's a whole mentality shift, because there are a lot of people who will be corporate sales or VP of whoever's company forever and be okay with that.
Yes.
Their company vacations and all that type of stuff. Where in your tenure of being with them did you start thinking of you? Or did it not happen until they said, you're going to the islands, you're going to the Philippines, and you said, you're going.
Absolutely
I'm not going.
I remember I had a negotiated contract, and it was a twofold deal. My VP said, VaShaun, I need you to do something for me. And whenever I heard that, I was like, oh God, what is it now? I am a young Black woman in a male-dominated world. And she said, I need you to challenge the decision of the president. And I said, you need me to do what? She said, the president is about to make a horrible, horrible decision. I hate it. He's not going to listen to me, but I think he'll listen to you. So I need you to challenge the decision of the president of a Fortune 500 company. Heavily degreed man, white male. And I said, okay. She says, you've got 2 days to get ready. She says, I have faith in you. And then she walked away. I'm sitting in my office completely like, I'm about to lose my job. Oh my God, this is it. You're telling me to go in here and tell this man to change his mind. And she expected me to change his mind. She didn't. So what do? I pray. I said, okay, God, I'm about to go in this man's office, and he is notorious for shutting everybody down. I went to go talk to his executive assistant. She was like, good luck with that. One of those. That's cute. And I said, okay. So 48 hours later, I prepared. I remember that day. I put my hair in a bun, put my glasses on, put on a black power suit, put on my high heels. I'm going to tell this man why he's about to make the worst decision of his life. So knocked on his door, walked in, how you doing? And he was just so busy. He didn't even acknowledge me when I walked in. So he was looking at his computer and he was typing. And I said, I just need 5 minutes to tell you why you're about to make the worst decision of your life. He stopped. He said, go on. I pitched this man for less than 10 minutes. He says, you're absolutely right. Tell my executive assistant I changed my mind. And I walked out the door. Do my little dance. And then I get to go to the executive assistant, which is an older lady, and said, he changed his mind. And she was like, well, who do you think you are? Da, da, da. So then I got to go back to my VP. I said, he changed his mind. She said, I knew you can do it. And it was in that moment I was like, I have that much power in my voice. I have that much pull. I can move decisions like that easily. Less than 10 minutes. Okay. So boom. So I was like, okay, if I can do that for him, what can I do for myself? It began the thoughts. Then shortly after that, I had to negotiate a multi-million-dollar contract. Landed the contract. I can do this for real. Like, I've learned enough in corporate America. I can do this for real. And so took a chance on myself. And here we are.
I just say that because, you can't skip over that. You just went from not going to the Philippines and now VaShaun Global, VaShaun Enterprise, VaShaun Network, VaShaun VaShaun Bitcoin. VaShaun, I mean, it just doesn't, you just don't jump from that. There has to be some.
So yeah, that was my springboard. That was
Yeah.
the first, I pitched my first business. I don't know if you want me to talk about that, but I can wait.
You can talk about all of it. We're here now.
Yeah, we're here now. So, as you said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Own several businesses. My first one is a publishing house and marketing firm, VaShaun Enterprises, and I wrote my story. It's called Behind Her Eyes, and go to VaShaunNicole.com and purchase it.
Yes.
Shameless plug, not shameless. And so I sold my first book, my first story to Barnes & Noble, pitched to them because they kept telling me no, and I told them you're making a horrible decision, and they bought the story. So got my first book in Barnes & Noble, had all my in-store book signings there, wrote my second book with my mom called 365 Days of Attacks But God. And so people saw all the dope stuff that I did in entrepreneurship, but I know you understand there's another side. Being attacked every single day, mentally, financially, your children, your family, your friends, your money, So we talked about that, being attacked for 1 full year while, having the success from Behind Our Eyes. Negotiated a deal with Joseph Beth Booksellers. Got in stores, did all the touring thing, and, I was inspirational, was doing all the things. I'm selling books, all is well. And I was like, this is great. I appreciate being inspirational. I thank God for allowing me to be inspirational, but I want to be effective. Like, I want to make change for real. So I had a side business where I would help my friends get jobs. So they're like, VaShaun, look at my resume. And I'm like, yeah, take that off, do this, go in there. This is what you need to say in the interview, you will get the job. And they did. So my side business turned into my second company, VaShaun Consulting. We are an alternative staffing organization, and we focus on those with criminal barriers and criminal challenges, help them get jobs, do transferable skills training with them to prepare them for corporate America. Because my thought was, I was a felon that made it to corporate America with no degree. I know there's more people like me. And so launched that 2018 in Louisville, and it took off. Businesses were contracted with us to help people get jobs. It was great. I love that part of my business. I love it. That is my heartbeat. But one day, I had a gentleman. He was a 3-time felon. He was on his 3rd strike. And his phone died, and he wasn't able to call his PO. His PO gave him his 3rd strike. He went to prison for the rest of his life. And so I said, what would have happened if he had technology quick enough to contact his PO to say, listen, this is where I'm at. I'm having car trouble. Would he be in prison right now? And that was something that just played in my head. I was like, we need to do something about it. So I began to look for technology. I'm like, state government, what are you all doing for felons that lack the technology and the connectivity to get to the next level? Doesn't exist, VaShaun. Doesn't exist. And I'm like, okay, God, are you telling me that I'm gonna build something else? Yes. So 2020, I launched a minority woman-owned tech startup that was first called VaShaun Technologies. We have pivoted to now VonTech Solutions and Ally Solutions. And we build technology for the state and federal government. And these are the solutions that those that don't have access to, technologies, apps, all of the things to be able to contact who they need to contact in an efficient way. And so right now we're on the cusp of scaling my business. I'm going to be doing some touring because people want to buy it from me. And I'm like, you're going to buy it from me, you have to pay.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing now.
Your consultant didn't just start with just doing businesses too. I believe you're responsible for hooking some people up too. So
yes, my God. Okay, I would never say that out loud. I hooked my best friend and his wife up, and I think they've been married for like 15 years. But
you're doing some hookup. I said we're gonna have the VaShaun dating services too.
Absolutely not. God has not graced me for that. These people will leave me alone. Absolutely not. I'm like, y'all not. I'm gonna do. Y'all gonna leave me alone. But anyway.
So I wanted to, before we wrap up, because we could talk forever and ever.
Yes.
But I'm excited about all that you've done. I'm excited that you were born free. I just think that that's probably going to be the name of the podcast is Born Free.
Born Free. Okay.
Because I think that it has continued to, because at first I was thinking about how, and I think I emailed you that about how you start to discover yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really think you discovered yourself. I believe that you continue to evolve in yourself.
That's
you
it.
know, that would probably be a better, you know, thing, that you continue to evolve in what you already were. And that has seemed to be your story, a constant pathway and a constant journey. And you're not even, I want to say you haven't really started yet. Like, you've just kind of done just a few different things just to, you know,
show the world a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're about to show the world something pretty big here soon. So y'all pray for me.
How do you balance, this is going to be my ending.
Okay.
How do you balance the crowded market of people saying what they do and not doing versus doing and not having to say everything you do?
Just doing it. So
I think I just said something, people. I'm sorry. Sometimes it hits me, and sometimes you gotta say, "Now that was good."
I could tell you to Google me. I could tell you that I've been in magazines. I've been on news. I can tell you all of that. I can tell you all those things, or I can do it. So when I walk in the boardroom with, you know, multicolored hair and completely myself and not worried about what anybody thinks.
I didn't recognize your hair was multicolored.
Multicolored, you know, it's fall, so I got fall hair. Got my fall hair on.
Yeah.
No, walking into those boardrooms unapologetically with the answer that they're looking for. I just do it. And so I remember I had an angel investor. He was like, "Why you?" I said, "Why not?" And he stopped. He was like, "Gosh, she's so aggressive. Am I aggressive? You're so intimidating. Am I intimidated, or are you intimidated? Like, I'm not going to hold on to your stuff. I'm going to continue to be and become and scale and move forward." So the answer to the question, just do it. I don't have to tell you, you know, a tree doesn't tell you, "Hey, I'm a tree and this is what I do." They just grow.
Yes, they do.
So churchy.
I am unapologetically, I am so, yes.
So that's it. I just do it. And so when people are like, "Who are you?" You'll say, "Who said you can? Who said I can't?"
Yeah,
I was
and
born
that
free.
takes, that's the name of the podcast. And that takes a certain level of confidence. It really does, because there are a lot of people who have dreams, ideas, goals, visions, and stuff like that, and that's it. They have them, but they do nothing with what they have. You know, so for those people who are watching, you know, speak to those people who, you know, could have been where you are, might be where you are, you know, are maybe trying to even douse down the version of themselves because of people who are intimidated by what they have.
I have two answers for that. First of all, I like to say everybody's not an entrepreneur, everybody's not a business owner. So everybody feels like, "I gotta own a business." No, you don't. I have 5 people on my team, 2 with JDs, 2 with master's degree, and 1 with a PhD. They're great worker bees. I'm the ideas person. I'm the one without the degree. So I need them to do what I do. I need my team's stealth. I need them to do all the things they do so I can be who I am. So if you're not an entrepreneur, it's fine. We need a second in command. You need your next man. So if that's your lot in life, don't feel like you have to keep up with people like me. Now, if you know you're an entrepreneur, I say continue to work your job, continue to do what you're doing until becoming an entrepreneur is the only thing you can do. I worked until I didn't have to work for anybody anymore. I had a full-time job and I was a full-time entrepreneur. And then I had a part-time job and I was a full-time entrepreneur. And I was like, I'm making more money as an entrepreneur than this job, so I'm going to have to let y'all go. I have to fire my boss, which that's a whole other thing. So it's going to happen, but give yourself time to do that. A lot of people are like, I'm going to quit my job and you can't break my soul. Wait, hold on, sis. You can pay your bills though. So let's stop.
Because
you got
the person
kids.
who wrote the song, which is funny, it is funny because one day she said, I left my job.
I quit my job.
You know, Beyonce is a job.
What?
So
Ma'am.
can't. So people are saying, I left my job. Don't you leave yours?
Absolutely not, because that bill is going to
it.
come on the 1st or the 15th, and you know, and you got children and they're hungry. So before you jump off, just make sure you have a contingency. But again, work long enough to where it's going to make itself available to you. So
that was even rich with you talking about just having a team who doesn't do what you do, and which is the power of people knowing their work, their own lanes, that you don't have to be the person in the front to support the person in the front.
That's it. That's it.
It's very important.
And they all say the same thing. We know you're going somewhere, so we just want to, I've had people on my team that said, I don't even want a salary. Because we know you're going somewhere, so we just want to, when you scale, we just want to be here. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to give you equity in one of these businesses, and so you'll be paid. So
I just want you on the podcast. How about that? I can document it. I remember the time.
You remember VaShaun, yes. That's so funny.
So let people know where they can follow you. VaShaun Nicole Metaverse. VaShaun Nicole airing on OWN Network. VaShaun Nicole, airing on MSNBC. So let people know.
Magazine.
Yeah,
no,
all of that.
It's gonna happen. No, seriously, you can find me linktree.com/VaShaun Nicole, and you can find all of my social media platforms. You can go to my website, VaShaunNicole.com, all things VaShaun. You can also Google me. So VaShaun Mosby. I tell people you'll see all my articles. My most recent one, I was featured in Today's Woman in Louisville, Kentucky in the August issue, which is a blessing. We'll talk about that a whole nother day. So there's ways to find me if you want to.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, as they say in the church, thinking it not robbery. To spend this time on my little podcast, that I'm still scaling. I just appreciate it.
Go ahead.
So those of you all who have tuned in, I want you to be great and know that you're born free. You don't have to become free. You are free. You just have to realize it. So thank you for tuning in. And for more of VaShaun, y'all go check her out. She's got some stuff you need to know. And come on, women. We need y'all to boss up.
That's
be
it.
your great self. All right. Thank y'all.
All
See y'all.